Hello, everyone. Welcome to North Star Knife Reviews. Today I have, well, I don't want to say vintage, but I have an older knife for you. Well, older being relative. This would be probably from the 1980s. And this is an American-made knife. It is from Imperial. And let's talk just a little bit about the history of Imperial, very briefly about Imperial history. Felix and Michael Miranda, Mirando, were the founders. They were immigrants from Italy. They settled in Providence, Rhode Island, and started working for Empire Knife Company. They then started their own company, Imperial, and it grew to become the largest knife manufacturer in the world. Right around World War II, Imperial was making more knives than any other company. During World War II, the military needed knives. Imperial joined forces with Ulster and produced knives. And then after World War II, Albert and Henry Baer would buy Imperial, merge it with Schrade, and that's how you get the Imperial Schrade Corporation. Now, Imperial made knives in the U.S. until 1988, when Schrade discontinued the name and just produce Schrade knives. Imperial now is being made again in China, as well. It was Taylor Brands, now it's Battenfield, excuse me. But you can get newer Imperials, but this one is one of those later production US-made knives. You can see it is a little small Stockman type. And these Imperials, as most of them did, have shell handles. You can see they're just clipped onto the liners. And this is very common this is what Imperial did. They made the Hammer brands after New York Knife Company went out of business, and they made those shell as well. Shell knives, I actually don't mind. They are not very expensive, even the old US ones. This one I think I got for less than $5. Might even been 2 or 3. And, you know, they're not the best quality in the world, but they were sold as budget knives just for everyday working men and women. You needed a knife, you didn't have a whole lot of money to spend, this is what you could get. And they made their business model selling less expensive knives and just selling a lot of them. Now, as for collectors, collector value, in monetary terms, probably not a ton. Although, I know Gizmo Carr, who's a regular commenter, thinks that these are undervalued, and I would agree with him. For these knives that really aren't as strong and don't hold up as well, for them to make it through to the present day, a lot of them have been beat up, broken, that sort of thing. So even though you can get these relatively cheaply, I think they're worth more to me as a collector and somebody who likes knives than the monetary value. I mean, that's not why I collect knives. If it was, I'm certainly doing it wrong. But I just really like these knives because they were just something that anybody pretty much could buy and have in their pocket. They were maybe the Frost Cutlery or the Rough Rider of the day. But we can take a look at this again. Now it's a shell. These are not actual pins. They're just molded in to the shell that is clipped on here. And the little Imperial crown. First let's get the outside dimensions. Knife is going to run 3 1/4 inches closed. Here's the main California clip blade. You can see the tang stamp here. It says Imperial. Better for you. Imperial, Providence, Rhode Island, USA. This was the last tang stamp that Imperial used, and they used it from 1955 until the name was discontinued in 1988. So I'm guessing that this was probably a mid-80s. At earliest, I would guess this was early 80s knife. There's a lot of time frame that this tang stamp covers. You can see the blade is about 2 1/2 inches. Cutting edge is going to be a little under 2 1/4. Okay, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the steel is on this. I'm going to guess something like a 420, maybe a 440A, but it's going to be a budget steel, obviously. You then have the little spay blade, which comes in just between 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches with a cutting edge just under 1.5 inches. And finally, you then have the little, sort of sheep's foot blade, not really, I suppose. And you've got the patent numbers on here, which are the patents for things like the shell handle. The length on this, about 1.5 inches, cutting edge, just over 1.25 inches. Right. Now again, these were just knives, and you see these still do have a pretty decent snap. I don't think this was probably ever carried much or used much. It's in really good shape. I know it's not an expensive knife or a, quote, high quality knife, but I really like these just as an example of US knife making, from World War II on up to the 80s, these Imperials and some of the older Hammer brands. Again, this is probably mid-80s is going to be my guess. I hope you taking a look at it. Hope you found it interesting. You guys have a good day, and I will catch you next time.